So the next bit, we want to repeat often. By the time that you walk away from today, you will have forgotten about half of what I told you. If you didn't care for this much, then it's probably not worth revisiting. If you did and you want to understand it more, you're going to have to repeat it more often. This is called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And what it shows you is that we need to have continued exposure over a period of time, known as spaced repetition, to consolidate our learning. So we don't want to just learn things once and then never revisit it again. We have to, especially within the first 30 days, we need to have multiple touch points of the information. And it might look a little bit like this, in which you expose yourself to it on day 1, and you revisit it on day 3, 5, 7, and then you start to space it out a little bit more. You go to day 11, day to 14, and then you go weekly, and you only visit it once a week. The amount of support, let's say you're using active recall or you're using prompts, the amount of support that you give yourself should decrease as your competency increases. So by day 28, you might just have to look at a word and you can recite everything about that word because you're more competent, but try that on day 3 and you've got absolute no chance. So you want to progressively decrease the support over this 28-day period as you increase competency. The last one we want to go through is we want to recover well. So we already know that sleep is going to be absolutely vital to create alertness, but it's also essential for retention. Neuroplasticity only takes place during rest. And that means that long-term learning only takes place during activities like sleep. When we sleep, we cycle through these different stages. We cycle through this kind of REM sleep, which is that light dream state sleep, and then non-REM sleep, which is that kind of deep sleep. And each of these stages actually play a different role in how we learn. So deep sleep actually supports the learning of finer details and the learning of motor control. So if you're learning, say, a deadlift, you're going to get more learning if you get a lot of deep sleep. However, if you're learning things like themes and meanings and emotions and principles, you actually learn that through REM sleep. Ideally, you want a good lot of both, but there's something really interesting within sleep is the fact that sleep consistency has actually been shown to be better for learning than sleep duration itself. So going to bed within 60 minutes of each other, even if you're only getting 5 or 6 hours of sleep a night, is better than getting 4 hours one night, 10 hours the next night, 8 hours the next night, and then 3 hours the night after. So it's actually better to be consistent even if you're getting less. Because we go through these 90-minute cycles through our sleep, it might be better to sleep 4.5 hours instead of sleeping 5 hours, so that you can actually wake up at the end of a cycle instead of waking up halfway through it. Sleeping 4.5 hours or 6 hours or 7.5 instead of sleeping 8 or 7, for example, might be more beneficial because you actually go through this process of waking up at the end of a cycle. And apps like Sleep Timer, or if you've got like a Whoop band and stuff like that, that can be quite good for that. The other and the final point is we mentioned earlier about those ultradian rhythms. So those 90-minute cycles that we can go through to learn, followed by a 20-minute rest. Now, one really cool way to support your learning is within that 20-minute rest is using what's called an NSDR protocol. So a non-sleep deep rest protocol, something like yoga nidra. So you might do a 90-minute learning and then follow it by a 20-minute yoga nidra session. And what that actually does is it acts in a very similar way to sleep, and it moves you into a state of deep rest, which reactivates your neural connections and allows you to essentially replay the information that you just exposed yourself to. So you just get more and more repetitions that essentially deepen those pathways and consolidate your learning. If you can go through those 5 steps and use some of the strategies that we've been through, understanding or cultivating the growth mindset, creating alert, creating focus, actually engaging in deliberate practice, repeating often and recovering well, then you can essentially give yourself the best chance to learn pretty much anything. But it does take effort and it does take consistency, and it's not something that's going to happen straight away. If you expose yourself to this once, it's going to be gone. But if you can use some of these strategies, you're going to give yourself the best chance of actually understanding and being able to learn and retain it.